when I was 11, I had this teacher who was really frustrated that I was kind of like a foot tapper and wiggler. We had to go see a psychiatrist, and I went on 70 milligrams of Concerta when I weighed like 100 pounds. That's a really large dose of methamphetamines. I think this idea that to fit into this model of how you're supposed to learn, you're supposed to load up with tons of drugs, and I'm like, that seems really crazy.
Did you in the moment know that it was wrong?
For sure, when I was 11, I was aware that when I took this pill in the morning, my day looked way different.
Wow. And like the purpose of the pill was just to keep you...
It was really about the other kids. It wasn't about me. It was like to make it easier for the teacher to deal with the classroom and make it a better experience for their kids. What's funny is in my town that year, I think like almost a quarter of all the boys in the school were on students.
Ben, welcome to the podcast. I wanted to kick this off with a question that I've been wondering ever since you and I started talking backstage. What got you interested in education to begin with?
I was truant from grade 6 to grade 9 and dropped out of high school. And I think that probably I really didn't like school as a kid, but I spent a lot of time doing school and like worked pretty hard in it. The other thing is that when I was 11, I had this teacher who was really frustrated that I was kind of like a foot tapper and wiggler, and that I'd move around a lot. And so we had to go see a psychiatrist, and I went on 70 milligrams of Concerta, which is one of the drugs you can take at 11 when I weighed like 100 pounds. And that's a really large dose of methamphetamines. And I think it developed I was already like a little rebellious as a kid and felt rebellious against school. And then now as an adult looking back, I think this idea that to fit into this model of how you're supposed to learn, you're supposed to load up like 100-pound 11-year-olds with tons of drugs. And I'm like, that seems really crazy. And there has to be a better way than that. So I guess something about I felt wronged during my school process, but I liked learning and liked a bunch of my teachers. And so I can imagine a version that's much better.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did you in the moment know that it was wrong or like know that you didn't
For sure.
enjoy it?
Do you know how much 70 milligrams of methamphetamines are?
No.
If you're 100 pounds and you take that, you're really going.
Wow.
And like you have anger issues, you have all these things, you're like crazy constipated. There's a ton of side effects. Yeah. And it actually like we went to an endocrinologist years later or whatever, and it had some effects on like my puberty and things like that. But they don't really know that the causes there are questionable. But for sure, when I was 11, I was aware that when I took this pill in the morning, my day looked way different.
Wow. And like the purpose of the pill was just to keep you like paying attention and what you needed to be in school, or like...
I think that was not, I mean, I had tons of great teachers. My 5th grade teacher was not good. It was really about the other kids. It wasn't about me, which I like understand. I think I was like disruptive and talked a lot and was running around all the time. And so it was like to make it easier for the teacher to deal with the classroom and make it a better experience for their kids. What's funny is in my town that year, I think like almost a quarter of all the boys in the school were on stimulants.
Wow. That is not good. And then as you got older, right, like you started looking back on your journey, you started kind of understanding. This was my experience especially, which I wonder if you can relate to. I started looking back on my journey and being like, wow, I definitely could have done that differently, or there could have been improvement points. And like, I wonder what I would have become now. Even like I'm entirely happy with who I am, but I wonder who I would have been if my education looked a little bit different, or like if I was approached a little bit differently. Like the classic, I always struggled with the classic, I think I'm bad at math, right? But like, what if you're not? And things like that.
Really? Yeah, I think there's only 2 reasons you work in education, maybe 3, or like you were on changing education, right? If you're specifically working on building something that changes the system, either you had a bad experience and you can imagine a version of yourself that's better than you are now, and you want to build the education that would have produced that version of yourself. And maybe the second is that you felt you had a particularly good schooling experience and you want to bring that to more people. But if you're working on net new things, I think it means you can imagine a version of yourself that's better than you are now. And that definitely is true for me.
That's interesting. So let's talk about that as we explore your journey. So did you do any education things before recess, or was recess like your first foray into education?
I did small stuff, I think, growing up here and there. I take a really broad view of the word education, like what it means, but coaching sports is related, or doing, tons of different things. Playing games with your friends can be related. But traditional education, I did some tutoring in high school and college and some debate coaching. But then 4 years ago, I went to work at a company called Synthesis School, which makes these team simulation games for kids, and like a kind of an AI math tutor, really a digital math tutor, not really an AI math tutor, but a digital math tutor. And yeah, I decided to work in education after building a company with my brother and wanted to work something I could work on for like 40 years. And so I picked education as a problem and then went to go work for the smartest people I could find. I thought Josh Don and Crispin were both really good options. Josh had built this school at SpaceX and done this really cool work. Crispin had collaborated and made these great stories called Conundrums and built tutoring companies in the past, and was just a really smart guy. And so I went to go work there and learn from them and hang out with them and follow Josh around and annoy him at times. And yeah,
What would you say that you learned from them there?
it's a really good question. I wrote a bullet point, like a 30 bullet point or 40 bullet point doc or something of just like all the things I learned from there and sent it to Crispin afterwards. I learned a lot of things about company building that were really interesting to see because the company grew really quick. It went from, like 0 to 20 million in 2 years, and then all the way back down to 3 million after a crazy product pivot, and then inched its way back up to 10 million ARR. And it's been like it was a cool, Crispin in particular is really comfortable with his back against the wall, and he is like just very fearless and like endlessly optimistic. And I saw kind of the power of that and like how many problems come up even if your company is interesting and cool and good and you've got great investors and great backstories, just how hard. So I learned something about that, of just like the need for total perseverance, that I think was crazy valuable. I learned a lot about education from, I mean, it was a cool place because I think it was like the mecca for 2 years of people who, it was like right as COVID hit, this great company launches that's got this cool backstory with SpaceX, and it's this new way of teaching kids things, and like teachers could work with it. And so, and everyone's looking for part-time income as these teachers. And so I think it was like the mecca for all these great forward-thinking teachers. And so I learned a ton from them, just details about how to make a kid feel seen and like how to use the after class time to pull them aside and get them to do things, and how to motivate a room of people and tell a story that gets everyone excited, and all these things. And Josh was particularly good at making kids feel like whatever they were doing was really important. He was really good at like whatever we were doing as a group, this matters. And he would really get everyone to buy in. And so there's a whole lot of that stuff that I think I picked up that was really valuable. That I would say is like 1,000 tiny skills. I'd go on this for a while. I learned a lot of stuff since this. It was a really good experience.
How did it evolve your understanding of education? Like, so you work for this top education company, right? And obviously it influences what you're going to do next, right? Which is recess.
Yeah. 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 What were the insights that led to what I'm working on now? There were 2 core insights that were very specific, I'd say, and then other ones that I walked away from, saying I'm going to start a company around these ideas and this thing I learned. And then now I look back and it's like, oh, there's other stuff that philosophically made its way in. But the first was that the number one predictor of retention, and this is a business metric, but also a learning metric, was if the kid had a friend in their class. So it wasn't who the teacher was, whether they were Illinois Teacher of the Year or they were one of the Joe Schmoes who didn't work out great at synthesis. That didn't affect retention that much. If you won a ton of games or lost a ton of games, didn't affect retention that much. There were all these things that you'd expect, which game you were playing, if you're playing a fun game or a bad game, because the games were different. Some of them were really great, some of them were bad. That didn't make that big of a difference. And I was like, those are crazy. I would have put all those first, but it was really if you had a friend in your class. If you were a friend in your class, you stuck around forever. If you didn't, you churned in 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
And that struck me as being a big deal because you got to make your business work if you're in education, and you got to figure out how to do that. And so, and then my anecdotal experience was that the kids performed way better when they had a friend in the class. They could take criticism from the teacher or from their peers way better when they had a friend in the class. They would talk about it sometimes when they weren't in the class. So they actually were progressing because they were thinking about it in their free time or talking about it in their free time. They're like all these things, or making maps in their free time because they would make it and send it to their friend. And there were like all these things that were, I was kind of shocked by how much a good social experience led to a better learning experience and a better business model. And I was like, that's really interesting. We spent at one point, like, I want to say $10 million a year on games. It's probably $10 million a year on engineering as a whole. So maybe like 7 million on games, something like that. And the games had less of an impact on retention than friend in a class, which is close to free. So from a business perspective, I was like, we really got to laser in on this and make this experience really good. And then the learning one was true too. So that was the first part. Everyone is sleeping on friends, like a lot, both to make their product sticky and fun and good, and to make the learning experience better. The second was the kids had a mandatory session once a week, and then they could choose from a list of events for the rest of the week. The feeling in the mandatory class and the chosen class, I taught both. was really different. And the chosen class just felt like electric. Like every kid wanted to be there. Every kid wanted to be there. They didn't have to go there. Their parents weren't paying for that session. They chose to be there. And their level of commitment, their level of drive, their like skill in the game, what you could do in a session was so different that I then had this second thought of kid buy-in matters a lot more than we treat it, than we like think about it. And I don't know, other than homeschooling, I don't really know of any good model that works in kid choice as a very serious part of their curriculum design, pedagogical design. You know, at best they like pay lip service to it and let them pick a project they work on for 30 minutes a day for a month or something. So anyways, the two core insights that led to recess were, which you'll catch the name, you hang out with your friends a lot at recess and you get to choose what you do. And so that's what led to recess, is a place where you could choose what you do and you'd meet lots of cool people and you could hang out with them whenever you want. And so if you were a kid in Idaho who was really into building circuits and crazy Minecraft contraptions and cool products, you could find other homeschoolers from around the country who did that kind of stuff. Or if you're someone who loved publishing books, you could make other friends who like doing that and making art. And one of you could do cover art and the other one could write it and the other one could copy edit it. And then you could publish it on Amazon or whatever. And kids are doing that kind of stuff on recess all the time. And those are the two core insights that led to the product that we've made thus far.
That's really fascinating, especially because, like, I mean, what is the topic that I hear kids bring up like all the time today? It's Roblox. And why is it Roblox?
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah.
they're playing with their friends most of the time, or like they're
And
meeting people.
it's one of the only game platforms. So on iOS, they can't download apps a lot of kids can't download apps they don't without their parents. So you either have to get approval to pay for the app or even just to download it. Roblox is actually just a giant app marketplace. It's hidden as if it's a game. Like we all think it's like a game. If you open it up, it's 10,000 games and the kids get to pick which ones they want.
That's really fascinating.
So both a place where you hang out with your friends and a place where you get to choose what you do with total freedom.
That's really fascinating. I hadn't thought of that before. So how have you taken all of these insights and put them into recess? And like, have there been any things that surprised you as you've built out recess, or is it like, yeah, I'm curious to hear what that looked like, what's really working, and questions that are stumping you right now.
What it looks like at recess now is recess started as basically once a day. It was as close to the word recess as we could get. Once a day at the same time every day, a whole bunch of kids would log on and we would use something like Gather Town and they could run around and talk to each other and hang out and meet each other. And I would like place games down and they could convene around the games they wanted to play. And that was how it started. So it was like just a place to go spend time and have there be a bunch of their kids. Now the way the friend thing and the choice thing, they work really in hand. And there's a big marketplace of classes. And the classes are run by YouTubers and they're run by like people who are professionals in their field. The interesting thing about recess is your parents can't sign you up for any classes. The kids pick the classes, but there's a second trigger. So the kids look through this marketplace and so all the thumbnails are really exciting to them. It's like it's not, learn basics of circuit design. It's how to build a trapdoor in Minecraft. It's, how to become a favorite TV, how to write a show for your favorite TV show, how to do this thing, right? And so they're presented in a way that kids are very excited about them because the only way you sell the class is if the kid wants to click on it. And then the second part is the kid requests it from their parent and then their parent can approve or deny the request. And so there's no such thing as a kid being in a class they don't want to be in. That doesn't exist on the platform. And so every room you go into, everyone wants to be there. And there's no such thing as a parent paying for a class they don't value.
That's cool.
And so there's this nice double trigger that I think it puts the kid in charge with a lot of trust from the parent. The second part about the friends is when you join a class, you're going to meet everyone wants to be there and they all like the same stuff as you, right? So you already are going to have a lot in common with them. And after the class is over, we basically you get suggested friends of all the kids you just met and you can add them as a friend. And then we get you a Discord style chat where you can chat with them and call them and hang out with them and play games with them. And then you can see what classes your friends are in. so you can organize and easily schedule joining up with them. And so there's another cool, so those are the two main parts. Like, how does this manifest? Kids pick the classes and parents approve them. And then we use the classes to help the kids make friends who like the same stuff as them, and then
That's
give
cool.
them great tools to keep going. And then what's cool is things kind of like will trend on recess. So like one kid will get really into this engineering thing or making these kinds of videos. Let's pick this engineering thing. And one of their friends will see and they'll join that class. And then one of their friends will see and they'll join that class. And now you've seen 3 people just join that class this week, and it kind of like becomes popular. And so it's cool. I think there's some waves of motivation that come over, and I think it helps because it helps make topics that might not normally be picked up by kids like become more popular.
That's really, really fascinating. So, what have you been surprised by on this journey? So, obviously, you started
Nice.
very differently than where you're at now, but like, have there been any things that have surprised you about either the way that kids use the platform or like how people want to learn?
I think on that front, not so much. I mean, I think there's kids use the platform. We launched this jobs feature, and kids were gonna hire. We were like trying to make a mini economy, so you could like hire each other and pay each other and get someone to make your book cover and stuff. And I was surprised at how much kids like to fire each other. I didn't see that coming. So we had to take that feature away. It's a small number of kids like to fire people, but the same people who wanted to post jobs were the kids who wanted to fire people. I think there's a way to make
That
that
is
work.
so
I don't know
funny.
what it is, but I think I'm continuously surprised by how, like, a lot of people try to label kids as being like motivated or diligent or ambitious or whatever, or curious. And I've been surprised at how often kids you would label as none of those things totally morph into absolutely those things in the right circumstance. Like when you get them going about their thing, and like we all know this intuitively. Like you ask some kid about who like can't memorize state capitals, and then you ask them and you can rattle off all 372 Pokemon and which ones were a part of the different leagues, and like memorize them perfectly and like all of their moves, and it's like, this doesn't make sense. Like, you can't remember 50 things that are pretty easy. Every time you like either help it happen or see it and can do something with it, I think, yeah, it's just always surprising. And sometimes you can like, so something about that feels
That's
slept up.
interesting. What do you think that means? So like there's a lot of criticism around homeschool approaches, more unschool approaches, right? Like let your kid do a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
what they like, and this probably depends on the kid and
yeah.
um their personal interests, their self-directedness. Like it probably depends on the kid, but there's a lot of criticism around an unschooling approach because it's like, okay, but in life there are things that you have to do, right? And like, for example, you might not want to memorize the 50 states, but at some point, yeah, or taxes, yeah, exactly. There are some things that you have to do. And I've heard the criticism quite often that like are you preparing kids for a world where they don't feel like they have to do the things that they have to do? I'm curious to hear your take on like the balance between having them like figure out what they're interested in and like fostering that and really promoting that as a thing that is valuable. Like, yes, you're interested in Pokemon and that's like the coolest thing ever. But then also, okay, well, like math, right? Like how do we make that really interesting? Or maybe it's history. Yeah, I'm curious to hear your take on that.
All things have a reason. I think it's useful if you can attempt to figure out what the reason that you do things are. Like, I'm particularly bad at doing things I don't want to do or that I don't think matter, or things that I have to do. And I don't entirely reject the premise. I do think there are things you have to do, but um, I'm way more willing to pay my taxes when I think about the purpose of taxes and the purpose of a country and what it means to be a citizen and all these things. And like when I start to think about them, even though I don't like doing the paperwork and these things, but at the same time, I think like this is where good entrepreneurs come from. You're doing your taxes and you're like, this is a total nonsense. Like, why do I have to do it this way? And someone is like, well, maybe you don't have to. Maybe we could make something that would make it simpler to do this. And maybe we could make something to make it even simpler to do it. And I can imagine TurboTax getting to the point where, I think they actually lobby to keep it complicated. But so I don't know. I have mixed opinions about it. I do think a small amount of discipline, I think like discipline training is a useful thing to learn. And I think you can train discipline in a bunch of different areas, and you can train discipline. And sometimes I think there's something to learn about when you can rely on an expert authority and when you can't rely on an expert authority. And when you can rely on an expert authority, you don't always have to ask why if you really trust them. So I don't know, like, there's a very long answer, but I certainly, we do a bunch of full school for kids, or have a handful of kids that basically just like a full school. And for sure they're doing rigorous math practice every day, even if they don't want to. And they're occasionally doing reading comprehension tests to see if that's going well, even if they don't want to. So as radical as I am, I still think there's room for that stuff. Then my second answer, I know I'm rambling a couple times in these questions. You asked good questions, so I'm
No,
like,
this is
I have a lot
great.
of
This is
thoughts.
great.
The second part is kind of the Montessori idea, which is like, I actually don't really think kids should play Pokemon. I think it's like a pretty bad game from a learner design standpoint. And there are other games that are similarly fun and exciting for a kid that have you do a lot more problem solving and logic problems or other types of problems in them, and have more transferable skills. And I think this is where Montessori was really smart. She really wanted to give the kid a lot of freedom and have the kid learn independence and learn self-motivation and how to focus themselves and all those kinds of things. And so she would let the kids choose whatever they wanted within a curated environment. So you couldn't bring your toys from home in, but anything she had in her space, you could take out and play with. There were these materials that she had custom designed that would like help scaffold the kids' knowledge and build upon each other. So when they came out, when they moved to the next one, there were kind of new things for them to learn. And when given that curated environment, the kid earned a lot more freedom. And I think this is similar to like if you grew up in a nice town that's super safe, where your parents spend a lot of time, they don't have to be really well educated, but they spend a lot of time learning, working, doing interesting things. They have good value systems. The kid can have a ton of freedom. From the time they're 8 years old, they can walk 4 blocks to their friend's house. They can use their time in interesting ways. I think if you grew up in other environments where there are like tons of bad influences around and lots of negativity and potentially even violence, you shouldn't get a lot of freedom as a kid. And so the better you
Yeah,
can
I
make the
actually love
environments,
this.
and this is where I get super obsessed, is the digital environment. I think there's like this idea that screens are bad. Almost every parent I know with a kid under 10 is like terrified of screens, has like a lot of anxiety about them, frustrations about them, doesn't want their kid on them, worrying about how much time they spend on them. And I think this is like totally, I think it makes sense, and it's really sad.
So speak to that a little bit, because that was one of my questions as you were talking. Like, I love this idea of curating the environment and then like having kids earn a higher level of freedom as they get to it. But like, how do you determine when is the right point to expose them to things that are highly addictive? Because that's the issue with technology. It's not that technology is bad; it's a tool, right? But then if you give your kid access to like a tool that has a lot of potential, like they could use YouTube for tutorials, they could also use YouTube for a host of other things that you don't want them
Totally.
doing. And so like
Yep.
from your perspective, where does technology fit in? And do you see that in light of like how you were thinking about Montessori, or is it kind of like evolved from there?
If you are a crazy involved parent who spends a lot of time with your kid and is nearby them with the screens all the time, and you use your screens in a really great way, so you don't model behavior of watching TikTok on the couch for 45 minutes, but you do model pulling them over and showing them how to build something in CAD, or that you wrote a short story, or that you did these things, and you're going to like talk to them about the pitfalls of where tech can get dangerous. I think you can give them like a ton of freedom really young. Really, really young. If you are the 99.8% of parents who have a lot of other stuff going on, and you are not going to dedicate probably what is a full-time job to curating their screen time, then I agree with them that I don't really know when. Like, 3 doesn't seem like a good time. 7 doesn't seem like a good time. 12 doesn't seem like a great time. 15 doesn't seem like a great time. And then at 18, you got to stop doing stuff for them anymore. So I guess like they can do whatever they want. You can't rely on the tech to raise your kids correctly or to teach the kids how to use them safely. They will not do that. That really has to be you. Or Or you work on the thing I'm working on, which I hope will have this effect, like for the YouTube example that you're giving, that segue into this thing I'm building now, is the super long story short is you download an app on your iPad and it turns your iPad from bad to great. It goes from like something you really are nervous about giving your kid to something you are absolutely hyped to give your kid. And they're coming to you at the end of the day and teaching you all these things they learned, and you're excited about it, and you and it's a very different way of kids interacting with screens. And we do that by relying a lot on AI for sure, and using one of the things that AI is really good at is kind of like mimicking text, like parroting something or translating it. Like if you want to like translate a document, it's really good at that. If you want to say so, or for example, for us, if we can get a good description of a parent's values, their value system, whether that be that they're really into faith and they want faith to be a big part of their kid's life, or they really want their kid to develop strong technical skills, or they want them to have a strong moral backbone in this area, or whatever, they can kind of just, if we can get a good picture of what their value system is, I actually think we can have, and we're doing this now, AI is kind of like help the kid discover the internet within the confines of their parents' values.
That's
And so same
interesting.
as if like I was looking up tons of cool sites and sending them to you as a parent, and you'd be like, I don't like this. I like this. I don't like this. We're going to basically try and like automate that, and then give you as a parent samples and experiences that make you feel connected to your kid's screen time, so you understand what they're doing on it, so it's not a mystery to you. And then you can just tell if this thing is working and you trust it to do what help you parent your kid. It's kind of like a digital companion for you on the iPad.
That's really fascinating, and it aligns with. So we recently compiled all of the ideas that Matt Bowman, who's the founder of OpenEd, had kind of put together through years of building OpenEd, and then also he was a teacher for a long time. He was a homeschool dad for a while. And so he and Isaac put together this vision of what education can be. And it's basically like education should be mix and match, like mix and match
Yeah,
aligned with your
totally.
values and your priorities as a family, and a child's
Yep.
individual personality, their interests, their strengths and weaknesses. And like, if for you as a parent, like this is what always scared me. So personally, I never thought I'd be a good homeschool mom because I always thought homeschooling was I'm going to sit in front of, a whiteboard and I'm going to personally be the one to teach you every single subject forever. Um, and that never excited me. Like I'm not a teacher. I don't think I could explain it well. I think I'd get frustrated. And like and really expanding my idea to, okay, I'm not necessarily having to open myself up to being the teacher and everything. Rather,
Yeah.
I'm becoming like an education designer. It's like, what could my
Yes.
child's education become? And I'm
Yes.
designing the education that aligns with our values, that aligns with them, and like that becomes something that can help them to become who they could possibly be. Kind of back to what you and I were talking about, like, you get into education thinking like,
Yep.
oh, if I had these different experiences, who could I possibly be? And as a parent, you now get to look down
Right.
at your kid and you're like, okay, like who could you possibly be? Like let's figure it out. And that is infinitely more exciting to me than the alternative of like this either or. I'm going to pick this path and it's going to be like this is it. And I think
Yeah.
examples like what you were talking about where these things get to be aids to you, right? Like you get to ask questions and figure it out. And like, you're not alone on this process. It's not like, okay, find one curriculum and let that be it. Or like, read this book and then you'll be an expert. It's like, okay, I'm going to pick the very best thing for math for this week. And then maybe next week it'll change. And maybe, and it's like, it is
Yeah.
this much more dynamic process, which is kind of scary for a lot of people, but it's to me a lot more exciting.
I think you're gonna remove the fear too. I think
Wait,
the removing the fear, I think is there's a product that's missing that would remove the fear, which is a more like they're in school they have these things called learning management systems,
yes.
and they're really built for the administrator, not for the kid. And so they're
Yeah.
built to like keep track of a whole class or a whole grade year, and to notice trends
Mhm.
in the grade year. And then there's a little bit there to kind of like make sure the kid didn't miss assignments or track their attendance or do maybe like notice that they've fallen behind in something. But I think you can, there are examples in a handful of tech tools now that are really good. Like there's this one called Math Academy. I don't know if you guys have that in your marketplace, but you definitely should.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll connect you to the guy who runs that. He's super cool and smart. And he was a teacher. But that have like school treats all knowledge like it goes in a line. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
really scary as a homeschool parent, because if you don't want to go in that line, then you are no longer on the same track as school and you can't compare yourself to the school benchmarks anymore. And so that's really scary, because it's like, if we deviate from this line, we're kind of flying blind. And I think in reality, knowledge is not ordered in a straight line. It's ordered in a big, complex graph of ideas that are connected to each other in different ways. And there are prerequisites and postrequisites, but it's much messier. And there's like many different ways to get to the same idea. And some ideas rely on a bunch of ideas, but others you can skip right over. Right. And so like what I think is missing is a really good tool that kind of maps the kid knowledge in a more open-ended and less linear way, and is backed and connected to standardized test scores, which I think a lot of parents and homeschoolers
Interesting.
don't like. But I think you can actually build a system that allows for rabbit holes and offshoots and tangents and a totally different way of going about it, and still have it feel really clear about all the knowledge that you're supposed to acquire in school, and what your kid has acquired thus far, and what they're not going to acquire, and what they will if you get on this path. And if you're missing this knowledge, oh, here's a really clear and easy way to go get it, if you do want to kind of go back into the physical school or to the traditional school. So I think this product is broadly missing. And we're, this is part of the thing that we're making for the browser, is like part of what we think is making the right environment for the kid to exist on the screen, is for it to have a good experience with a computer with this tool, is like to have it build a lot of confidence and make it really clear for the parent about how they're using their computer, how it's affecting their learning, and where they can go. I think the computers are uniquely good at kind of measuring and mapping this kind of stuff, compared to, even if you had a human sitting next to the
Yeah.
kid 24/7, the human wouldn't do as well as a computer would do.
Yeah, this is interesting because this was the very first thing that was like, I think everybody that saw that first Khan Academy video of Sal Khan sitting with, I think it was his son,
Yeah.
right, on the iPad,
Yep.
like
Yep.
that was the very first aha moment that everybody had of like, oh wow, like what could possibly, be the future of education. And I think that
Yeah.
there's something so important there because there is this shift happening where like in the past, education was this thing that you entirely outsourced, right? It was maybe not
Yeah.
in the, like the way past, but like in
Yeah. Way
in
past, it was something you did all yourself, and then you outsourced it all.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so like we've been in this kind of movement of okay, outsourcing education is the way to go. But
Yeah.
like it's not working for a lot of families and a lot of families are not aligning with the curriculums that they're choosing or more like in your case, some families are seeing their children being mistreated by the system. It's not set up to treat their kid
Yeah.
properly. And so like
Right.
they're creating this new paradigm where I think parents are becoming education designers. And I think
Yeah.
my hope, at least, is that like this opens up a new conversation about kind of what you were saying, where parents need different information if they're education designers, right? They need information about
Yeah.
like what do my kids want? What do my kids like? Where are my kids struggling? Like they need different kinds of information to fill those gaps.
Yeah.
And like and they also need to be connected with the solutions to those things. So if they are this in between, this person that is like diagnosing and also trying to fix, I've something that I love to bring back is this phrase I heard from I think actually I forget who it was. They were like the person most invested in making your child successful is the parent. Period. Because they're the one that has to live with them, they're the one that has to experience them all day long. They're the ones that later in life, whenever they are successful, get to look back and be like, all right, we're good. Right? Like they're the
Yeah.
closest to wanting this kid to succeed. And so like empowering them to be able to make these decisions is really, really fascinating.
While you were talking, I was thinking of some analogies or metaphors. Yeah, this idea that you design your kid's education, not necessarily that you facilitate every part of it. feels like a big shift. And it's like, even if you go, there's a, you're on a spectrum from I dig all my soil and mix it with the cows that I have on my site and make my own manure and find all the seeds from things that are near me and plant them all, and I don't buy anything from anybody, and then I get the food, and then I make there's this video where one guy tries to make a chicken sandwich from scratch, but like truly from scratch, and it takes him like 6 months, and it's a terrible sandwich, and he was like really bummed that it wasn't a good sandwich. That video, it's pretty entertaining. And on the other end of the spectrum is not DoorDash, it's someone chooses every single meal for you and sends it to you, and you have no choice in the matter about even what meal you have. And it's like most people actually want to like definitely pick their meals and like sometimes cook and do some other things with them. But if they had to do all that stuff on their own, they'd be like, please just someone feed me. But when you can make it really easy, they actually want to be involved and they want to do this stuff. And so I think there's like something similar, and it's still, I don't know, it's maybe not the perfect metaphor, but the fact that it's way easier to homeschool now and there are lots of good software materials and good online classes and tutors available, I think are a huge contributor to why homeschooling is getting way more popular.
I think it's easier to homeschool now than ever. A lot of the stigma is falling away as to like what a homeschooler is, even within the homeschool community. And I know that some people are like very particular, like this is homeschooling, this is not. But like I think there's
Where I
this
am
like
now in San Francisco, it's high status to homeschool.
interesting.
Like it is the opposite. If you hear they're a homeschooler from somewhere else, I don't know if it engenders the same thing, but if someone in San Francisco hears another person in San Francisco is homeschooling, they assume that means like those parents are like really smart, something really good.
That's awesome.
It's different.
That is awesome.
The stigma is for sure falling away.
Interesting. Isn't that fascinating that like the privileged thing to do now is to be able to teach your own kids and like and take them out and choose how they learn and imbue your culture. Like
I think it makes sense. It means I think it makes a lot of sense because it means two things. It means one, you're dissatisfied with the quality of the education. Like here, it means that you're dissatisfied with the quality of the education, which means you got high standards. And two, it means you've organized your life in such a way that you can solve child care and good instruction, which I think a lot of people just assume they're going to spend a lot of time on it, that you have like figured out how to carve out enough time to be able to do a good job with that and be able to figure out childcare in an expensive city. And so it's almost like it means that you've got really high standards and you have a lot of control over what your lifestyle looks like.
Interesting. That leads me to my final rapid fire questions. My first question for you is what do you see like ideal world, the future of education looking like?
Flexible campuses with lots of great resources and amenities. So pottery workshops and basketball courts and sports fields and all that kind of stuff. And they're flexible in that you can go at different times. You can come late, you can leave early. Your family can go on vacation for a week when you want to go on vacation. Your parent can come hang out with you for an hour in the middle of the day and get lunch with you if they've got the hour free. Nice places where the kids can have lots of physical freedom and they get to know the same people from the time they're 5 to 18. So they can have like long-standing relationships. Plus an extremely rigorous, interactive, dynamic learning experience. I'm really into this guy named Seymour Papert who has this concept of micro worlds, which is like how kids should learn things, and they are immersed in a micro world. So he talks about like language learning and how much better language learning is when you're immersed in it. And he's like, I can imagine this for things that aren't just learning foreign languages. I can imagine versions of it that are good for math, versions of it that are, Miss Frizzle's Magic School Bus, if you ever watched that as a kid. You get transported into like the inside of a vein. That's how you start learning biology because you're like trying to get out and you got all these problems that you encounter. And so the white blood cells come to attack you. And that's how you learn about the immune system and this kind of stuff. And I think like that is
awesome.
is like the right model. I think that's the right model. And so one half is this wonderful physical place with great culture, great resources, tons of cool people, flexibility for the family and for the kid, and combined with spectacular interactive dynamic experiences that respond to the individual kid and make their learning experience really good and fun and interesting and visceral. And so, yeah, what it looks like is that campus plus a few hours a day working really hard on a screen.
Very cool. Second question, what are some of the best, give me the top 2 education books that you'd recommend everybody read?
I'm gonna give such lame answers. One is like the dialogues, like any of the conversations between, Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, any of that kind of stuff. I only get 2.
Yes.
That's too hard. If I only get 2, then I Seymour Papert's Mindstorms I really like, or actually like the Children's Machine better.
That's a good one. I haven't read that one yet, actually. I'm always like, I pride myself. I want to have like a stellar library one day, and I don't have that one
Yeah.
yet. So that I was very surprised whenever you said his name. I haven't heard of him before.
Oh, I'm like obsessed with that guy.
Interesting.
That guy's like if you want to try and figure out what I'm attempting to build, you can basically just read his books and more or less like even the campus I described is like somewhat similar to the way he talks about Samba schools and
Interesting.
these different places. Like I really think he really had it mostly down. Just the things he was trying to do were technically infeasible at the time.
Interesting. There's I got to give a shout out as you're talking about this. The best way that I've currently seen this done is in Kansas they have this thing called a learning lab. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of learning labs, but I don't know about the one in Kansas.
Okay, good. Have you heard of the learning lab in Kansas?
I have not heard of that.
So this is a really cool model, and it was built by there are a couple of like really strong donors in Wichita, but what it is a basically like a kid co-working space. There are 7 different school models
Cool.
inside of it. So it's very similar to this.
Oh,
It is as close to this as you get, and they have a ton of like amazing resources. So they have like a podcast studio, they have a video studio, they have like what they call a mess lab, which is like a decked out science lab. They have basically like a whole print shop. They have basically any sort of like resource that you would want as a kid and as a parent.
yeah.
And the way that their facility works is they have rooms that people can rent. So like there are micro schools that rent them. There are like different homeschool co-ops that rent them, and they also have a subscription model. So
Wow.
like families can like purchase a
Wow.
month of subscription, and
Get a
then
desk
they
or
can just go
something.
in whenever. And like
Wow.
that is a really great idea. Um, it
Yeah.
is I think we're not there yet. Like, I look at it
Is it
and
working?
it's working. What's interesting is the people that have the hardest time buying into it are homeschoolers. So people that are
Yeah, 'cause
open
it's
to micro
homeschooling.
schools, yeah, people that are open to micro schools, people that want like an but
Yeah.
if they don't explain it as alternative education, if they explain what they're doing as homeschooling, usually like that's not the crowd
Yeah.
that they hang out with. It's a really really cool space. I'd recommend going to check it out if you ever have a chance.
I will go. I like flying to go look at schools and hang out at them and see what they do right and do wrong. So I actually probably will reach out to them and see what's up.
Yeah, I can introduce you. They're great. But that is like
Well,
I went there and I was like, I love this place. I can't believe there are not more of them. But I think it will
yeah.
take like a cultural movement shift in the definition of like what is education, what is homeschooling, how are we
I
doing these
mean,
things for it to work.
true for all, like, I sometimes I'll talk to other people who are working on education, and sometimes it'll get competitive between different people, or like I'll hear like other people get competitive with another company. And my perspective is like none of us are fighting against each other really. Like we're really attempting to fight the status quo. Like the amount of
Exactly.
dollars in education, the amount of ex- room for expansion of new ideas is like ginormous. And yeah, we should figure out as a community, as an ed tech, as a people who are working on new things, how to like help each other make that true. Because if there's anything we can
Yeah.
do to put cracks in the system and have a much bigger impact for all of us, even as businesses, than it would be to compete for the relatively small alternative or homeschool market. But yeah, I
Honest.
don't. There's got to be big cultural changes.
Huge. And to be honest, like the thing that I love about OpenEd is it was started with the mindset we celebrate when a student leaves because they're going on to find something better. And like we are creating a like hopefully this robust ecosystem of educational options because if we actually believe that kids need something different, like no child is standard, they're going to need different things, right? And so like
Yeah.
to be that prideful to say like, yes, my company is going to solve every single homeschool need, like you just can't do it. And like the more that people see this space as something that they can pick and choose from, the more you have to be okay with that. Like they're going to choose the best thing for them, and that's good.
Yeah. It, and I think it's extremely good for the overall system. Like when people get locked into contracts or experiences or products for too long, like right now, like you sign for school, you're kind of stuck there for a long time and you don't really leave the school except if it goes like absolutely terribly and
Mhm.
the school makes like unilateral decisions. So you just don't get a lot of evolution. There's not a lot of iteration. Like the good products don't float to the top. They don't become popular. It's hard to break into the model with new things. Like if you can move into a pick a mix world or a mix and match world, I think the products will get a lot better just by nature of the fact that people are making more choices.
Yeah, very interesting. Last question. When parents haven't found out yet what clicks for their kids, what do you recommend?
Find out what video games they play. It's like a short, that's like the most actionable piece of advice I can come up with. The other ones are maybe longer, but your kid could play lots of different video games and they choose to play a small number of them. If they read a lot, what books they read. Um, Video games, it tends to be easier for them to choose because their games are like really made to be available to kids and easy to find and stuff like that. And hidden in their video game choices are a bunch of preferences about what kinds of problems they like to solve and what kinds of topics they like to think about. And so don't look at them as trivial, look at them as signal. So go hang out with your kids and play video games for an hour. And I think you'll come back thinking they're very passionate.
Very interesting. That was a perfect note to end it on. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was quite interesting.
It's really fun. You're great at this.